All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello, and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today we are in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. We are with Tim, who is the owner of the Billy the Kid Museum. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. And this is where Billy the Kid met his demise. But he's got a really nice museum here with a lot of things that besides just Billy the Kid. So we are going to talk with Tim. Tim's going to give us a tour, and we're going to see what all we can see. Thanks for being with us here, Tim, on Where Am I to Go podcast.
Well, when you first come in the museum, you'll see on the right-hand side, you'll see basically the beginning of the museum. There'll be photographs and dates that kind of tell you when it was started.
Okay, so it looks like 1953?
Well, really October of 1952.
Okay.
And this last October, we started our 70th year of business.
You're not old enough to have done that.
I've been here all my life, and I'm 65, so if that tells you.
Ooh, okay. So your dad started it?
My grandfather started it.
Your grandfather started it?
Yes, he started it in October of 52. When he first opened it, he called it Fort Sumner Museum.
Okay.
Of course, October, November, December is when tourism starts slowing down. And he thought, well, maybe I need to change it. So he changed it to Billy the Kid Museum in January of 53.
Okay.
Well, January, February, and March are worse than October, November, December. So he about starved to death when he first opened up.
I think that's the case with a lot of businesses.
Right.
But
so once he got started in, when the summer hit, things kicked off. We've been here ever since.
Cool. So you're open 5 days a week, right?
Well, we used to open in the summertime. We used to stay open 7 days a week. But it has gotten to a point where it's so hard to last all summer long at 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
So we have decided that we're going to close on Sundays.
Okay.
Year round. And so we'll be open Monday through Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
We stop the tours at 4:30 because it takes a minimum of 30 minutes to go through. Some people take more than an hour.
I would imagine. And now, so the collection, your grandfather started the collection. Did he have everything at that point in time, or has this been a continual collection beyond that?
Well, as we go through the museum, you're going to see the first two items that he collected. And he collected those in 1914.
Wow. Okay. So let's go take a look at the museum.
When you first come in, the first thing you come to is General Sumner's things. He's the guy that this town is named after.
Okay.
And he was never actually here, but he was the general over this area, and he was wounded in the Battle of Antietam
Okay.
during the Civil War, and he died from the wounds, and then they named the fort in his honor. So he never actually was here, but he was the general over the area.
Okay. And you've got several items here, like a desk.
That's an old Wells Fargo's desk. But
Oh, really?
The post office letterbox and the blankets, General Sumner's blanket, that's stuff that's connected with the fort.
Okay. And so what are his personal items?
The blanket, the sword belt, the picture,
Okay.
his regalia box, that all came from his family. And
Okay.
They sent that to my grandfather in the late 1950s.
Really? Okay, then we move on over here to a set of longhorns that are probably the biggest around longhorns I've ever seen. Those things have to be, what,
Well,
6 to 8 inches round
That
at
is
the
a
base?
cross between an African Watusi and a Texas Longhorn.
Really?
Yes.
That's quite the set of horns.
Those horns came out of the Buckhorn Saloon in San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. Okay, and then you've got some information on Maxwell.
Yeah, Lucian Maxwell was the largest single-tract landowner in the United States at one time. What he did is he married into the Spanish land grant in northern New Mexico. He bought out all the heirs, and then over the years, he ended up selling the land grant and coming to Fort Sumner. So,
Okay.
So he bought, whenever they closed the fort in 1868, he came here and he bought all the buildings for $5,000.
Okay. And
Now-
but his land grant was huge.
Yes, a little over 2 million acres.
Like a whole bunch of northern New Mexico
Yes.
was.
Yeah, and part of Colorado.
And the land grant, help me understand how exactly the land grant worked. That worked under the Mexican government, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Spanish land grant.
And then what happened when the United States bought the territory from Mexico, or signed the treaty with Mexico? Was he able to keep that land?
No,
or
he sold that tract of land. He sold it and got out of it. But the reason he sold it is because they discovered gold up in the mountains, and he couldn't keep people off his land.
Okay.
It took him 6 years to survey it.
Wow. That's insane. That is crazy. But that's a lot. 2 million acres is a lot of area.
That's a lot of area, and it's pretty rough country up in there too.
Right. You're talking over around Cimarron and some of
Yes,
that. From Cimarron on over to Taos, just
Yeah,
about,
well,
wasn't
it even
it?
shows you here, where it goes up into Colorado.
Oh, okay. So he had a lot of cowboys hired.
He had 30 families that whenever he sold the land grant, they came down here and lived at the fort.
Wow, 30 families.
30 families.
That's crazy. Okay, and you've got quite a few artifacts from him. Now, is the family still around here?
No, they're not here. The last relatives that I know of are in Albuquerque.
Okay.
We have the photograph that we have, and Lucian Maxwell's wife's dress, and some other things that we have in the museum were purchased from Lucian Maxwell's granddaughter.
Okay.
And I was with my grandfather when he purchased the items. I was a little kid. So
Wow, that's crazy. So they've been here for a long time.
long time. Now I'll tell you a story about if you have ever heard of the Koch brothers.
Right.
The Koch brothers purchased the headboard, the wash basin, and the carpenter's bench that Billy the Kid was laid out on the night he was killed from the family in Albuquerque.
Really?
$320,000 for those items.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And they still have them?
The Koch brothers have it.
They still have the items. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But they did pay, I believe it was $2.3 million for Billy the Kid tintype. The original.
So they're the ones that own the tintype too.
Yes.
And there's only one picture of Billy the Kid, correct?
Well, there's some that, once the $2.3 million price shot out there, all of a sudden there was all kinds of pictures popping up that
I'll
people
bet.
are claiming.
Have any of them been verified though?
There was one that's called the croquet picture, and we have a copy of it here on the wall. And the last I heard, I haven't heard from the guy that owns it in a while, but it was insured for $5.5 million.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, Billy the Kid, tell us a story about the demise, I guess, it was here. He started out in Silver City.
Started in Silver City, worked his way into Lincoln, and then he was kind of all over the place from there, from Lincoln.
He was
to
on the
Fort
run
Sumner.
at that point in time, big time.
Well, after the Lincoln County War, he was involved in that, and he had an opportunity to kind of stop what he was doing,
Right.
but he didn't. He continued to steal horses and cows from the wrong people, and it was basically the people that were involved in the Lincoln County War. There was one side that had the politicians on their side, the other side didn't.
Right.
Well, you know what side came out on top.
Of course, they always do.
It's no different then as it is now.
Right.
So
Yeah, we did a podcast at Lincoln County, or at Lincoln, with the tour of the city or town, and some of that last year. So we got some of the Lincoln County War story,
right.
and Fort Stanton and some of that. But
I had a school group yesterday that came in, and one of the kids asked me, well, why was he so famous? And I said, well, a lot of that is due to the newspapers and dime store novels.
Right.
And people that wrote books and things like that. And I said, but, you know, he's larger than life, really, you know, because of the legend.
Well, and the legend's still 150 years later, still going
on.
going really strong.
Right.
And there's a controversy around whether he actually was killed or not, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah, there's been a couple of guys that claim they were Billy the Kid. One down in Hyco, Texas, named Brushy Bill Roberts. If you watched Young Guns 2, that's when that kind of brought that out about Brushy Bill Roberts.
Okay.
And then there was a guy on the west side of the state in Rama, New Mexico, by the name of John Miller that claimed he was Billy the Kid. But there's really nothing come up. You know, there's a lot of speculation and everything like that, but I think there's enough evidence that he was shot, killed, and buried here at Fort Sumner in 1881.
Well, I've seen that evidence because just a little ways out of town, they've got the big headstone.
Right.
And the headstone's been stolen a couple times, it said.
It's been stolen twice. First time it was gone for 26 years. They found it in Granbury, Texas.
That's
Second time it was gone for 8 days. They found it in Huntington Beach, California.
that's crazy. Yeah. It's not a small stone either.
Well, the small footstone, you know, I mean, it's...
Oh, it's the foot. Okay.
It's the small footstone's the one that's been stolen twice.
Okay, I was looking at the big one that's like 4x4, and I'm going, how in the world do you sneak that out of town?
And here's another example of, you know, they said that Brushy Bill came in and carved pals on the stone, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wrong. That was on the stone when they set it. And the stone was set in 1930.
Okay. You're talking about the big stone.
Big white one, yeah.
Right. Okay. Pretty amazing.
But what we have here in this part of the museum, we have a lot of paintings that were done by Carlos Clancy. He always did pencil drawings to begin with. My grandfather talked him into doing oil paintings, and he did strictly things about Billy the Kid.
Okay.
The connection that Carlos Clancy had with Billy the Kid is whenever they captured him and they were taking him to Las Vegas, New Mexico for arraignment, their wagon broke down, and they went to Carlos Clancy's father's ranch and borrowed his wagon to finish the trip to Las Vegas.
Oh, really?
So that's how he has the connection with Billy the Kid. Now, when
Did he actually meet Billy the Kid, or?
I don't think so. I think it's just through his father. You know.
Okay.
The actual connection with Carlos's father, he was a sea captain, and he sold his ships to Wrigley's gum.
Gum.
Came out here and had a sheep ranch. Don't know why he did that, but he did. And his ranch was north of Fort Sumner.
I was going to say, he's about as far from water as he could get. Maybe he didn't want to see another wave.
Right. Another interesting thing about Carlos Clancy, when he passed away, Jarvis Garrett, Pat Garrett's son, was one of the pallbearers.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting too.
Right.
Okay, then you've got a board over here that has a coroner's inquest on the death of Billy the Kid, written in Spanish.
Yeah,
I guess I might as well leave because.
Well, it's translated in English.
Oh,
too.
is it?
Yes.
Then I could stand here. I might come back and look at it, but it's one of those things. If it's in Spanish, I'm lost.
Yeah. Here is the tintype I was telling you about that has Billy the Kid. That's called the croquet picture.
Okay.
We had this on display in here 2 years before the owner of the tintype brought it to the public.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Kevin Costner did the narration on the, I think it was on National Geographic. They did a special on this photograph, and he did the narration of it. Yeah. And
like him.
pretty interesting.
Definitely looks like him. The stance.
Yeah.
Well, here's the biggest thing, and you know, I'm not an expert, don't claim to be. I have never seen a Western photograph of a man wearing a sweater.
Right.
The only one I've ever seen wearing a sweater is Billy the Kid. The famous picture that he's in, he's wearing a sweater. In that picture, he's got a sweater on.
And he's the only one with a sweater.
He's the only one with a sweater.
I wonder why he wore a sweater instead of a jacket like.
I have no idea unless, somebody gave it to him and he liked it and maybe they're warm. I don't know.
Huh. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is a normal tintype is going to be, 3 by 5 inches?
Right.
And you've got this blown up into a 4 foot by 4 foot picture, so you can see detail.
Right.
And it's amazing how clear the detail is in this blow up.
It really is.
Because you can see facial features and everything that's going on in the picture. It's not fuzzy at all.
On the special that they did on this photograph, they were explaining some of the things in the photograph, and they were talking about these black dots that are on the photograph.
Right.
Those are sweat marks from the photographer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting too. Now, do they know who took the picture?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I
Okay.
really don't know.
That's just it's an interesting picture, and it's a picture of a cabin with a couple of people riding horses. There's a man and a lady riding side saddle with another lady
Charlie
talking
Baudry
to him.
and his wife,
Okay, Charlie Baudry and his wife.
Doc Scurlock's wife.
Okay. Then we
All
got
the
3
kids.
kids. We
All
got
the kids.
3
Scurlock's
kids
kids.
hanging out on a swing.
Yeah, Scurlock's kids.
Okay.
Sally Chisholm,
Okay.
Tom O'Fallard, Billy the Kid. This is Paulita Maxwell, Big Jim French, and Doc Scurlock.
Okay. Now Billy the Kid was shot at Maxwell's home.
Yes.
And Maxwell knew that he was harboring Billy the Kid, or he
Garrett?
had to have known.
Well, the speculation or the opinion of a lot of people is after Billy the Kid killed the 2 deputies in Lincoln, Pete Maxwell didn't like him hanging out with his sister.
Okay.
And they think that he had a big part in Pat Garrett being at the right place at the right time.
Okay. So a little bit more to the story.
Right.
Okay.
Now, what we have here are some cooking pots that belong to Jesus Silva. These pots belong to Jesus Silva's great-great-grandson,
Okay.
and he allows us to have them on display here.
Okay. And who's Silva?
Silva was the first man to go into the room after Billy the Kid was shot.
Oh. Now I noticed when we went to the cemetery where Billy the Kid's buried, there were a couple of Silvas
yes.
there. So.
Yep. So they're connected with Jesus.
Okay. And then you've got a picture over here of, I'm assuming, Billy the Kid going to the door.
Yeah, you were asking about what took place that night, and in this painting, but done by Carlos Clancy, it shows Pete Maxwell in bed, Pat Garrett sitting on the bed talking to him. There's 2 deputies outside, Poe and McKinney, and then Billy the Kid's backing through the door. The reason he's backing through the door is when he stepped up on the porch, the 2 deputies were sitting on the porch behind the pillars.
Okay.
When he stood up on the porch to come in to talk to Maxwell, they stood up, and when they stood up, he said, who are you guys? And he backed into the door and asked Pete Maxwell
Right.
who it was. Garrett recognized his voice and fired 2 shots. First shot hit him, the second shot missed.
Well, the first shot must have done what it was supposed to do.
Yes.
Wow. And then you've got the tintype that everybody, or a picture of the tintype that everybody associates with the only
Right.
picture of Billy the Kid.
Right.
And then this here must be the Maxwell.
That's in Lincoln.
Oh, no, that's Lincoln. There you go.
that's in
The
Lincoln.
McSween and the.
That's the courthouse and then the McSween store.
Okay. And so did Pat Garrett hang out in Fort Sumner a lot, or did he kind of take off
Well,
after?
I think at one time he owned a butcher shop here, and then I think he dealt cards at one of the saloons. He was here for a while.
Okay.
I think the biggest misconception that people have is they think Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett were best friends.
You hear that a lot.
And I don't think that was the case. I think they're acquaintances. I think they knew each other. But in all the things that I have read and studied and everything, I never really saw where they rode together or hung out together. It's not like how they portray it in the movies,
There's a lot of things portrayed in movies.
Right.
Okay.
What we have here is the barber chair that Billy the Kid got his hair cut in Mesilla before he went to trial.
This is the actual chair.
This is the actual chair.
Wow. And we're looking at an old style barber chair that actually looks like it'd be pretty comfortable, covered in velvet. That had to be hard to keep the hair clean out of it.
It was leather. They redid
okay.
it in about 1980s when they redid the upholstery on it.
So it was leather.
Leather and horsehair.
Okay.
Which is a shame that they redid it. I wish they'd have left it alone.
Yeah, you almost want to go back with leather, but...
Now, we were talking about Jesus Silva. This is Jesus Silva's great-great-grandson. His name is Tom Drake.
Okay.
These are his boys. They're up bighorn sheep hunting.
Those are
Desert sheep.
Those are some bighorn sheep.
There's the sheep.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Made Boone and Crockett. So.
And they've got a situation here, or a scene here, where they've got an old cash register and another barber chair, a child's barber chair. That one's like a high chair for little kids. It sits up quite a bit higher.
You don't see too many of those.
I was going to say, I've never seen one of those.
That was at the Chicago's World's Fair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they had time to get their hair cut in between exhibits?
I don't know if they were showing it or what they were doing, but that's where that came from.
And then you've got an old switchboard in here.
Yeah, that came from White Oaks.
Okay.
And White Oaks is a ghost town, basically. That's where Susan McSween is buried, and one of the deputies that was killed when Billy the Kid escaped is buried in White Oaks.
Okay. Cool. And then you've got some pictures of Pancho Villa.
Oh, yeah.
There's a picture of Pancho Villa and I'm assuming his wife?
His wife, yes.
Okay. And these are big. These are 4 foot tall and 3 foot wide. Yeah. And then you've got a train robbery, I'm assuming?
That's connected with the raid.
Okay.
What we're fixing to go into is the original building.
Okay.
This is the first building that my grandfather built. My grandfather and my dad made all the cement blocks by hand to build this.
Really? They're not adobe, they're cement.
No, they're cement blocks.
Okay. And as we come in here, we've got lots of different cases with lots of different displays. Wow.
This is I call this the heart of the museum right here.
Okay.
This is the center room and what we call the gun room. We've got a rifle that Billy the Kid gave to the stage driver between here and Roswell.
Okay.
It was in 2 families over a period of 110 years.
Really?
And my dad finally located it in California in 1990.
So it hasn't been here that long, but it's
here since 1990.
okay. And then the door, you've got a door with a shotgun blast through it.
The shotgun blast has nothing to do with what happened, but that door came off the Maxwell house.
Okay.
Now, if you remember, I was telling you about some of the other items that my grandfather bought from Lucian Maxwell's granddaughter. And this is the curtain that were in the room and in the house. And I also told you about the carpenter's bench that it was laid out on. When I was with my grandfather when he bought this stuff, it was on a table. I considered it a table.
Okay.
But looking back now, I think it was the carpenter's bench.
Really?
And we didn't know what we were looking at.
So you ended up with some actual curtains out of the Maxwell house. You've got a door out of the Maxwell house. You've got rock that has carvings on it, Billy the Kid. Now, is that something that he carved himself?
Well, if you notice, it doesn't say Billy the Kid.
It says Billy Kid.
It says Billy and Kid, and that's what he went by, either Billy or Kid.
Okay. And where did that rock come from?
North of Fort Sumner. There is a spring out there that if you're walking along, you have no idea it's there. And then when you come up to it, it's down in the hole. That's where that rock came from.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's actually, I'm sure
Have the Koch brothers come by and tried to buy it?
You know, I hadn't seen them. I was really surprised that they hadn't come in and looked at what we have, but that's okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think one of the brothers has passed.
And then you've got a whole collection of different.
You remember I told you that we had the first 2 items that my grandfather collected
Right.
in 1914?
Right.
These top 2 firearms here are the 2 that he found whenever he was 10 years old.
That he found,
He found them, yeah.
out in the dirt, or
Out in the dirt. He and his brothers and some other kids, there were 13 boys,
okay.
had took an old wagon and made a sled out of it because it had snowed, and they're rabbit hunting. And the rabbit runs into a pack rat's nest. And my granddad, being the youngest, the brother said, "Get off and dig that rabbit out." So he gets off and he's digging, trying to get the rabbit out of that pack rat's nest, and he keeps hitting something hard. So they tear into it, and they found 26 guns.
Really?
No way.
So each boy got 2, and those were the 2 that he kept.
And so, do you have any of the brothers' guns, or just?
Those are the only 2 that we have.
Okay, and we've got a sawed-off shotgun that's cap and ball, and we've got a Spencer long barrel military 1860. That is, how come they were there? Does he have any idea why the 26 guns were?
We assume probably that
Cash.
the Comancheros were kind of prevalent in that part of the country. Goodnight and Loving didn't even like to come through here because it was pretty rough,
Okay.
So they're thinking it was some type of camp at one time.
Wow, it's just hard to believe that somebody would leave behind 26
Well,
guns.
they may have to leave in a hurry, You never
Maybe.
know.
We did a podcast in Cody, Wyoming at a dug-up gun museum. And he's got, what did he have, 1,300 dug-up guns.
Wow.
And I asked him, I says, how is it that people just left their gun? It seems like that would have been the most important thing they could have. But, it's just amazing.
Well, it's just like, you lose, let's just say you're out deer hunting or something, then you lose a knife or something like that. You don't do it on purpose, but it happens.
Yeah. It just seems like when you left, you'd pick up your gun because you're used to carrying something that weighs 10 pounds with you everywhere. And you've got quite a gun collection here. You've got lots of different firearms in here.
We have a little bit of, some old military rifles, some old pistols. We have a nice collection of Colt Lightning rifles, which are kind of rare.
Okay.
And then we have the first generation Colts over here. So we have a pretty nice gun collection.
Now, are the chaps, you've got some woolly chaps over
do have
here.
some
Are those
chaps.
something that Billy the Kid had, or just time era?
Well, back in the, I'm going to say 1980s, somewhere in there. A guy came through, claimed that his grandfather was a newspaper reporter, and that he bought those chaps and spurs from the Maxwells.
Okay.
And it was said that those were Billy's. He had left them there, and he only wore them at certain occasions. So we don't have any real strong authenticity to those.
Right.
It's just the story that's told to us.
Huh. And then you've got a whole bunch of books here on Billy the Kid.
This just gives you the idea of some of the books that have been written about him. We also have a pretty interesting item here, is a travel case that belonged to John Tunstall. John Tunstall was the Englishman that was killed, and basically that's what started the Lincoln County War.
Right. And he was the one that Billy the Kid was working for.
Yeah, how old do you think he was?
Tunstall?
Yeah.
I don't know, 40?
Okay, most of the movies portray him as an older man.
Right.
He was 25.
What?
25.
Really? Because he had a pretty big spread.
His family was wealthy.
Okay.
He worked for his father at their mercantile store in Vancouver.
Okay.
And his father's partner said, "You need to get him out of here. He's running our customers off." So his dad gave him a bundle of money and sent him to San Francisco, and then he worked his way out here.
Wow. And that's his actual shaving kit, or
That was given to him by his father when he left.
Really? That's amazing.
And then right behind you,
You got some
here,
cool stuff in here as far as historical items.
this is John Chisholm's Confederate sword. He was a cattle buyer for the Confederate Army.
Okay. And that's the Chisholm Trail was named after
Well,
him.
there's two different Chisholms.
Okay.
This Chisholm spells his name different than the other Chisholm. The other Chisholm went through Oklahoma and up like that,
Okay.
up north. And it's, but John Chisholm is buried in Paris, Texas.
Oh, we know where that is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where he's
there's an Eiffel Tower with a great big cowboy hat on it. Big red cowboy hat.
Well, he's in his cemetery is a great big marker.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, we had to stop and look at that on one of our trips a while back. We
that's where
went
he's-
out of our way to go to Paris.
Yep, but that's where he's buried.
Okay.
I don't think the real John Chisholm was as good a guy as John Wayne that portrayed him.
Really?
In the movies.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, then we come back, or you got something.
Yeah, we
over
have
here?
one other thing that's, New Mexico has another outlaw that's pretty famous.
Okay.
His name is Blackjack Ketchum.
And where did they catch him?
Well, he was up in Clayton, New Mexico. This is a public hanging notice
Uh-oh.
for Blackjack Ketchum. And the reason he's pretty famous is when they hung him, guess what happened?
One of two things. His head popped off?
Exactly.
Okay. I was going to say his head either popped off or else he dangled for 20 minutes or 30 minutes before he died. It seems like those seem to be the two stories.
This set of handcuffs was said that he was supposed to wear these when he was hung.
Uh-huh.
I got these from Mel Gilbert in St. Joe, Texas. Real nice guy. He felt like they needed to be here because it's New Mexico and everything, so he sent them to me to display them.
Wow.
But I did some research, and I told him, I said, you do realize that Blackjack Ketchum only had one arm? And he said, no, I didn't know that. And I said, yeah. So if he's wearing handcuffs, what's the deal? But if you look at the photograph real close, which is this one right here, on the left side, you see that rope around his leg?
Right.
They tied his good arm to his leg through
Wow.
the handcuff.
And you found this picture after you had talked to him?
I had the picture, but I did a little research, a little more research just to see, and that's what I came up with.
Wow. And you've got some pictures of the hanging and one without a head on it.
Yes, sir.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, you've heard of Doc Holliday,
Right.
and in the movies, what did they usually call him?
You're going to have to help me because I don't watch enough TV.
Lunger.
Okay.
You know what a lunger is?
Nope.
Somebody with tuberculosis.
Okay. Gotcha.
In 1879, Doc Holliday was a member of the Lungers Club in Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Okay.
He and Bill Leonard, the guy that signed this certificate, were in business together.
Okay. Wow.
This is Holliday's business card.
He was a dentist. I didn't know that.
Wyatt Earp, John Clum, who helped capture Geronimo, and then John Wayne.
Where did you come up with those?
I got them from a collector that had them.
I did good.
Yeah, that's...
What happens is a lot of these guys have this stuff in their safes or at home or whatever. They get older. They figure, we better do something with this. So things start coming out every once in a while.
Right. That's just amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
This is a Bowie knife that was used by Fred Waite. Fred Waite rode with Billy the Kid during the Lincoln County War. This Bowie knife, you can date it by what's on the blade. On a Sheffield Bowie knife, if it was made 1890 and prior, all it has is the maker's name and Sheffield on it.
Okay.
If it has Sheffield, England on it and the maker's name, it was made after 1890.
Okay.
And the maker's
And this one
name,
just has Sheffield on it.
and it fits in that scabbard only one way.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Okay, I need to back up.
Okay.
There's a sign here, entrance to Billy the Kid Museum, 35 cents, plus federal and state tax of 5 cents. 1953. Your dad was making it big.
Well, my grandfather.
I mean, your grandfather was making it big.
He was making it big, yeah.
Making it big, 35 cents a visit.
And you know, one thing I want to say is we don't have the big fancy building and the big fancy glass displays, but we've got the stuff.
I was going to say, I think your displays are nice. They may not be big and fancy, but they fit the museum quite nicely.
If you go to a lot of museums, they'll have a big, nice glass case. One item in that case.
Right.
You know, if you think about it.
And here we've got a glass case that's probably 10 foot long, and you've got, I'm going to guess, 25 or 30 guns in here. You've got 20 sets of spurs. You've got a buffalo skull. You've got another double barrel shotgun sitting down here on a crossbuck. You've got a stagecoach mail bag. You've got a set of chaps, a saddle, military display from the U.S. Cavalry. I mean, a hat. You've got 150 items in that one display,
case, yeah.
in that one case. And then we move down to another one and we do the same thing. We've got a saddle with pistol and holster. Well, you've got, what, 3, 4, 5 pistols in here. You've got the arm protectors, leather arm. What do they call those?
Cuffs.
Cuffs, okay, leather cuffs. You've got some saddle bags and some more woolly chaps and a wolf hanging, hide hanging. You've got all kinds of things in here. And then on the other side, he's got like what would be old 1950s style kitchen cabinets that all have glass fronts that are packed with clocks, bells, plates, dishes, pans, sewing machines, spurs. Oh man, you got a ton of spurs in there. And violin, more clocks, arrowheads, old pottery, the old Indian pottery. It just goes on and on.
Yes.
All kinds of things in here.
Yeah, this has a little bit of everything in it, you know.
Some dinosaur bones.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, are these things that your grandfather found, or stuff that he just acquired?
Stuff that he acquired, and one of this was found down close to the grave site.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of the stuff is, you know, when they're cultivating these fields or digging ditches or whatever, they come across some of this stuff, you know. So
then we come down through here, doctor's bags. Man, scales, more clocks, carriage lights. You just have all kinds of things here. And what's the story with this clay figure?
It was found in Silver City.
It looks a lot like a dragon with wings and mouth open. It's probably 2.5 feet long and stands up about 18 inches. Now this was found like in a...
It was a hillside. This guy was up there messing around, and he saw this opening and got into it. And this wasn't the only thing that was in there. There was some other stuff that he had found. And my grandfather was always out and about. And he come across this guy, and he bought this from me. So this has been in the museum since probably 1959, 1960, somewhere in there.
So do they have any idea of the origin of it?
No, they don't. You know, it's right down on the Mexican border. Don't know exactly what it is.
Have they done any testing as to how old it is, or what era it's from?
Here's the problem with that is when you send this stuff in to do that, sometimes you don't ever get it back.
Oh yeah. Wow. A lot more lanterns, coffee pots, just tons of stuff. There's a lot to see here in this museum.
Then we'll go out through the back.
Oh, we got more.
Oh, we're only getting started.
Oh, okay. As we step out here, we've got
It's a
bear trap.
Number 6 bear trap. Don't find too many of those. If you watch pickers,
Right.
they came across one. They were excited to come across it.
Yeah, up in Wyoming, I've managed to see a couple at auctions that are about that size, but they're pretty rare, and they go for big money.
Right.
You've got a two-headed cat.
No. Two bodies.
Two-bodied calf.
Siamese calf. My dad saw that when it was alive.
Really?
Yeah. He remembers seeing out in front of the bank.
Uh-huh.
A bunch of men were circled up, so he worked his way through, and they were looking at this calf.
And it was still alive?
Still alive.
Wow. And we come into this area.
This is what we call our saddle room. We have all kinds of different saddles and some equipment that they used back in the day.
And a head mount of a longhorn steer.
The significance of that came off of Senator Falls Ranch.
Okay.
And that's, if you ever heard of the Teapot Dome scandal, Senator Fall was involved in that.
Okay. And we did a podcast at Midwest in Wyoming, which is the Salt Creek oil field, which is the one right next to Teapot Dome. And so we covered a little bit of the Teapot Dome in that Salt Creek.
Right.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah, that was the connection with that. That was the last steer off of his ranch.
Okay. Then you've got a parlor chair down at the end with the high back and the mirror and coat hangers and all of that. A lot of coffee grinders.
What that is right there is an old hair dryer.
Oh, really?
But we used to have it sitting by another chair. And I had some guy come in and he said, "When I was a kid, you had an electric chair here." I said,
"Oh."
I said, "No." He said, "Oh yeah, I remember it." And I said, "No, we never had an electric chair." So I brought him out here and I said, "That's probably what you saw, that right there."
Right. Yeah, some of that old stuff's pretty scary. Those old perm machines, have you seen those?
Yeah.
With all the wires and yeah, you don't know if you really want the lady plugging that in to curl your hair or not.
Right. But these are tobacco cutters. And coffee grinders.
And coffee grinders, lots of coffee grinders. You've got probably 70 in here?
Probably.
All kinds of different styles from the big ones with the big flywheel cranks on down to small ones. Got a butter churn, harmonicas, more butter churns, and cameras. Holy smokes. Look at all these cameras. You've got the little Instamatics from probably 1965?
Yeah.
And then older ones than that even.
Yeah. That was my
old movie projector.
Grandmother's 8mm projector.
Wow. And then typewriters.
Yeah.
We got a whole collection of typewriters and old radios, telephones, bunch of sat irons, milk jugs, toys.
Yeah.
A lot of toys from the 50s. Wow. What in the world is that? That's a radio. Okay, I'm looking at a kind of a half octagon box that says Radio Junior, and it's got weird little stacks on top. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea unless it was.
I'm wondering if it's an aftermarket thing that somebody just kind of cobbled together. Wow. Walkie-talkie set. Everybody sees the little tiny ones. Those ones are a foot and a half long.
Yeah.
And then a little railroad collection.
My dad worked 31 years on the railroad, so he collected a lot of railroad stuff.
Yeah. And then some of the old cylinder music boxes. Now that's a graphophone. Is that what they played those
these
cylinders on?
Yeah, they played the cylinders, but this one they had a big wax cylinder that they
went over the top of that.
I don't have any of the big wax. I have the small ones, but I don't have any of the big ones.
Huh. Okay. It's amazing looking at the old record player type progression, because they had so many different styles of records and stuff back in the day.
What we're fixing to go through here is just a hodgepodge of a little bit of everything. So,
okay,
these
got
murals here came out of the old Fort Sumner Museum that was closed in 2016.
Okay.
And I purchased those from the lady that had the museum, and I thought they're, needed to be up somewhere. So
And this has pretty much the life of...
it has a story about Billy the Kid, kind of the highlights.
Right. And it's all pretty much Billy the Kid related.
Right.
Yeah. And they're all murals. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 murals.
Yeah.
And they're all about 8 foot tall and 4 foot wide. It looks like they're on a sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
Really neatly painted with all the different events. That is cool. And you've got lots of old farm equipment over here on the backside.
It's more railroad stuff.
Wow. Some old stoves, wood stoves. And just a lot of old antiques. And this is pretty neat because you've got them out where people can actually see them. They're not behind glass. You can
Right.
get a feel for what these things were. Old safes. That safe there looks like it had to get broken into.
It was. Yeah, it was.
Holy smokes, look at those cauldrons.
Yeah. Cast iron.
Cast iron cauldrons like they used to boil the hogs in and
Right.
stuff.
Exactly.
And
This
then
is our wagon section. We got everything from buggies to horse-drawn hearse.
I love the old horse-drawn hearse. The woodwork and the designing and stuff on them is just phenomenal. And then you've got several buckboards, different styles of buggies, old chuck box, back of a chuck wagon, Studebaker even. Old Fordson tractor, some old wringer washers.
And that's a broom making machine right back here.
This oh, okay.
All this equipment is used to make a broom.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Old hit and miss motor. Just tons of stuff out here. You could walk around here and look for days.
Well, that's why I say, I tell people a minimum of 30 minutes. Most people take an hour or longer.
And then you've got the headstone or a copy of the
Yeah, it's a replica of the
replica
gravesite.
of the gravesite of Billy the Kid.
This is just a little, like I said, a little bit of everything, glassware. And
Yeah, you've got a lot of stuff in
then we
here.
get in here to the ice boxes and the old hand-operated washing machines. And we have kids come through here and, we talk about these ice boxes. I said, at your house you have a refrigerator.
Right.
These are ice boxes. And I said, the reason they call ice boxes is you put ice in them to keep things cool. And I said, so this is going to be a little bit of a science lesson. I said, you have 2 compartments on an ice box, top compartment and bottom. Where does the ice go?
Well, of course it goes in the bottom one, right? No, it goes in the top.
Of course. You do
Because the
old hot
cold
air.
goes down. Right.
Right, because the cold goes down, so they get a kick out of that.
And the ice, where did they get their ice around here?
They had an ice house. They had what they call an ice house.
That they were able to have cooler in order
Yeah.
to, right.
Yeah.
But before that, I know like up north, they'd go out on the lakes
Yeah. Well, down here
and
they
cut
didn't
big
have that.
blocks, but I wouldn't think you'd have that here.
Yeah, they had a couple of ice houses here.
So they
Now,
probably,
I don't know how, that was in the early 1900s,
right,
So,
because they had refrigeration of some sort at that point in time.
well, this is a 39 refrigerator.
Well, and that one's got a cooling unit on
Right.
top, right.
I got tickled. I don't know if you guys watch Yellowstone 1923.
No,
They were talking about the electric wash machines and refrigerators, and this is what they had showing them.
okay. Yeah, the old Maytags used to have a kickstart
Engine.
gas engine on them in order to run some of those.
And that's a Maytag, but the gas engine's not on it. We have the gas engine, but it's not on it.
They also had electric ones, but a lot of the homesteads and stuff didn't have electricity till the
Right.
mid-50s when the Rural Electric Association came through.
Right. And this is a replica of the grave. This right here has probably caused more controversy than anything that my grandfather ever did. The reason he built the replica is because in the late 50s, The city of Fort Sumner owned the cemetery, but the person that was running the museum down there was in charge of keeping the weeds down and everything, and they didn't do a very good job. So in the middle of summer, you couldn't even see the grave. It was surrounded by weeds.
Okay.
So he had this built so people could get an idea of what it looked like.
Right.
So
Well, I think it's a good idea. Not only that, the gravesite itself is 8-10 miles.
well, it's 5.5 miles from here, but it's 3 miles off the highway.
Right.
So
So it's not
so
real easy to
you're
get
looking
at.
at 6 mile round trip.
Right. 1950, that was a little bit further than what it is today, but
We have an old jail cell here. This came from a mining town in northern New Mexico called Dawson.
okay.
And the mine was owned by Phelps Dodge. They had a big explosion, killed over 200 some odd miners. So the Phelps Dodge basically closed the town down, dismantled it, took off.
Wow. And then you,
And my grandfather got the bars.
grandfather, got the, that's pretty cool. It's really neat that you're keeping this in the family and keeping it up and going.
Yeah. Well, I
Is
don't
this
know
what-
I don't know where you were this last Sunday,
I don't know where I was last Sunday either.
but we had 80-mile-an-hour winds here.
Actually, I think I was here last Sunday. No, Sunday I was when I came into town. Yeah, we were pulling a camper in that 80-mile-an-hour stuff.
We had a pole here. We lost the pole, and it did damage to our building. So I'm tearing all that off to redo it. So that's why that's open like that. But
Okay. And again, here you've got 3 different buggies
Yeah.
and a kitchen set up,
Blacksmith shop.
blacksmith shop.
This is a homesteader shack.
Okay,
This is a fancy homesteader shack. Most of them had dirt floors. This one has a wood floor.
right. You've got the bed, you've got a rocking chair, a table with the jug on it, small stove, kitchen set up. Oh man,
I was out doing stuff earlier and I forgot to close this.
now we're into the modern stuff,
Yeah.
kind of modern
Yeah,
stuff.
this is a 1917.
1917 Ford truck, Model T.
Yep.
Wow. You've got some nice deer mounts on the wall, an elk and a couple deer.
Yeah. This is a 26 Model T Roadster. This was my grandfather's car. He drove this up to the day he died in 1974.
Really?
Yeah.
That is so cool. And that was his daily driver?
Daily driver.
His daily driver. How many times did he have to rebuild the motor?
Oh, he had them worked on. There's a guy here, his name was Orville Bell. He did all the work on my granddad's car, so.
Wow. That's too cool.
Right.
Then you've got a 23 Chevy touring car, 26 Ford touring car, the old
behind
Kaiser.
The story behind the Kaiser Manhattan, 1954. Had a gentleman come through the museum, and he came out and he said, "Man," he says, "you got a nice place here, but you don't have a Kaiser." I said, "No."
And
sir."
who does? You
And
don't see them very
you know,
often.
And he said, "Would you like one?" And I said, "Well, sure, but I don't know if I can afford it." He said, "Oh yeah, you can afford this one. I'm going to give it to you." And I said, "You don't have children or anything like that would want it?" And he goes, "They don't care." And I said, "Okay." Well, 3 or 4 years went by, never heard nothing. You have people
Right.
say things and do. We get an email from a gentleman in Vermont, and he says, "We just settled my dad's estate, and in his will, he left you a 1954 Kaiser Manhattan."
Wow.
He said, "It's in Lubbock, Texas, in storage. If you want it, you have to go get it." And I said, "What day do you want me there?"
Yeah, no doubt. This thing's in awesome shape.
Yeah,
Is
he
this
was in
the
process of
shape it was?
He was in the process of redoing it.
Really?
This is exactly how it was when I picked it up.
That is unbelievable. And you don't see Kaisers very often.
No.
Like very, very rarely. You've got a couple of, that's a Studebaker,
Studebaker.
isn't it? I was going to say
Yeah.
a Studebaker. and-
This one here is a Willys.
Okay.
That was my grandmother's car. She bought it brand new, 1952.
And did she drive it like your dad?
She drove that, she didn't, they had a newer car, but they drove it a lot.
Wow.
She was mad at my granddad because she said he treated it like a Jeep. She said, "It's not a Jeep, it's a car."
Wow. Then we come on around here. You've got a bunch of automobile memorabilia.
This display is for my brother. He was killed in 1976.
Ooh.
He was a college student at Eastern New Mexico University, and he was murdered.
Ooh.
And we had all this stuff in storage in boxes and stuff, and about 5 years ago, maybe 6, I decided that it was time to display it. And so we did, and you know, it was hard for my mom and dad at first. Because they walk by here every day.
Right.
But it's been good. I mean, you know, I think it's been good for them, good for us. A lot of people see it, they read a little bit, they wonder what happened and things like that. But it was just a tragic story, you know, that took place. Should have never took place, but it did. It's kind of one of those wrong place, wrong time type deals.
Right.
And the biggest tragedy of it is that the gentleman that killed him plea bargained from first-degree murder to second. They sentenced him 10 to 50. He served 13 months and walked.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So that's our judicial system for you.
I refer to it as the just us system. Just us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's a little bit of the story behind that.
Wow. Sorry about that. That's tragedy, like you said. And now we get into the gift shop. Holy smokes, you got everything in here. You can buy longhorn horns that are 6 or 7 foot across. You can buy Billy the Kid mugs, along with New Mexico mugs and shot glasses and stuffed toys and T-shirts.
A little bit of everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
A lot of everything, it looks to me like.
Right.
This is really, really nice. Well, I've really enjoyed your museum,
Well, good.
and I appreciate you taking your time. You guys are right on the main street of Fort Sumner.
1 block west of the Super 8 Motel.
And easy to find. I mean, there's signs coming into town and everything else. There is so much to see. I am going to go back through and see again, because we just kind of skimmed the surface.
Right.
But this has been really nice. I appreciate you taking your time. You guys have a website.
We do.
What is it?
Just go BillyTheKidMuseumFortSumner.com.
There you go. How much easier can you get than that?
Yeah.
And if you're coming out this direction, from any direction, Fort Sumner's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But it's not a bad little trip to swing on out and go around if you're going between Albuquerque and Roswell or Clovis.
Clovis, Roswell, Albuquerque.
All of those areas. It's not that far off the interstate. You're what, 30 miles off the
44.
interstate? 44 off the interstate. If you're going across 40?
Yeah.
40, yeah.
Get off at Santa Rosa, or you can get off at Tucumcari and come across also. So.
And Tucumcari's got a nice little Route 66 museum that we did a podcast at here a couple of years ago too. So you can hit them both. They're not that far apart.
Well, I know Santa Rosa has the Route 66 museum.
I have not been to that one.
It's really
we did the
nice.
Tucumcari one.
They have some really nice automobiles there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, I appreciate your time, and I finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. There's so many things to see, do, and explore, and everybody have an absolutely wonder-filled day. Just as an added reference, we have a state-by-state breakdown as to what podcasts we've done and where we've done them on our webpage at whereamitogo.com. We also have a Facebook page where we post all of our pictures at Where Am I to Go Podcast on Facebook, and listen to us wherever you catch your podcasts at. Thank you very much for listening, and again, have a wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?